You guys are going to have to bear with me a little bit. This is not my talk, and I can't really see the slides all that well from here. So it might be a little bit of an adventure. But Thomas was unhappy to not be here. He really wanted to, but we just ran into some problems at the laboratory that prohibited him from leaving. Let me start. The first slide I remember, basically this says that doing chronology is important, because we need that to understand the origin and evolution of the moon for a variety of different things. The motivation for this talk is basically this slide here, and then the one that will follow, I believe. And if you look, this is a histogram of ages that were determined by SIMS on zircons that are present in lunar breccias. And you can see there's a wide range of ages, but there is a very pronounced peak at about 4.34 billion years. We've dated, and others have dated igneous rocks at this age, and so it seems pretty clear that this is an age of a pulse of magmatism that occurred roughly at about 4.34 billion years. But the question is what are the meaning of the other ages that define the histograms that you see here in blue? It could reflect that all of these ages represent igneous crystallization events. And so that means we have evolved alkali sweet magmatism producing zircons from about 4.45 billion years all the way to 3.8 billion years. Alternatively, some of these ages could be reset by metamorphic events, and that's hinted at strongly by the fact that the end of that array is at about 3.9 billion years, which is Imbrium. And we don't see anything significantly earlier than that. So there's probably an impact component in here. But then there's also the possibility that none of the ages mean anything, and that they're all just disturbed because these rocks have seen levels of metamorphism that we're not typically used to seeing in most planetary bodies, and that go largely unmasked because the moon doesn't have much water in it. So one of the things that sort of predicated this was looking at a paper that came out with a couple of zircon ages completed by nanosims that were extremely old. The ages that they put forward are represented on the upper right there. The oldest age is about 4.45 billion years. There's a mantra in the zircon community that says the oldest age wins. And the question is that really right? And so if you look at the range of ages that were determined in this particular rock, which is a norite, by the way, they're represented on the histogram here, and they go from about 4.45 all the way down to about 4.0 billion years. And the authors interpret, perhaps correctly, that these ages, the real age of the rock is 4.45 billion years, and all these things are disturbed. One of the interesting things to note, however, is that the rubidium-strontium isochron that was determined 40 years ago or so is 4.2 billion years on this rock, leading to the suggestion that maybe we're seeing some sort of disturbance both on the young end and on the old end. And there's some hint of that. If you look at the plot on the lower right, that's a plot of ages determined on the same spots, on the same zircons, by two different ion microprobe techniques. The vertical axis is determined by large radius 1280, and the horizontal axis is determined by nanosims. And you can see there's a fundamental shift of the nanosims ages to older values. So in this scenario, with the typical way we approach this, was we'd say the oldest stages win, and so you'd say the rock is 4.4 billion years old, and everything else has just been disturbed. But is that really right? So John Valley put a paper out about a decade ago looking at similar disturbances in zircons from Jack Hills. They have a wide range of ages. He did an atomic microprobe analysis, and he produced something that you probably can't see, but it's on the left-hand side of the diagram here. It's a cross-section through 1 micron of one of these zircons. Those little red areas are areas where lead has been increased in concentration dramatically. And if you analyze those leads, they're going to have a different isotopic composition than the lead in the matrix. And so you're getting a fractionation of parent-daughter. And if that's within the scale of your domain, that's going to affect your ion microprobe ages. We've also been working with Katie Goss and Adrian Brearley here at the University of New Mexico on some Apollo 14 rocks and some zircons that were given to us by Carolyn Crow. And we've done ion microprobe analyses on them. I think you're going to hear more about this in the next talk. They show a wide range of ages. What Katie has observed is that there are these similar types of domains sitting in these Apollo rocks that are seen in the Jack Hill zircon. An example of that is the image on the lower right of the diagram, which is a zone that contains lead oxides. So the idea is to try and understand what's going on here with these spot ages, and the approach is sort of twofold. But the first is to basically model a hypothetical zircon and see what happens if it undergoes a shock disturbance at a certain point in time. So I started these models and then sort of asked Thomas to figure it out. He did all the work, and then I forgot all about it until yesterday when I got the news and I'm giving the talk. So the basic idea is you assume the moon formed at 4.5 billion years. It has a mu value, which is the uranium-lead ratio, which is parent to daughter value of 500, fairly typical value. The zircon then forms from a reservoir that grew at 4.35 billion years. That has a mu value of 5,000, again, typical of the zircons that we analyze in our lab. And then it underwent a disturbance at 3.95 billion years. So basically simulating what you might expect from a typical alkali sweet zircon that experienced an event at Imbrium. So the bottom line and sort of the money slide is this. This is a plot showing the lead isotopic composition on the vertical axis. For those of you who don't know, a lead isotopic ratio is converted through a model directly to an age. So if you have a 207, 206 value of 0.54, you calculate an age of 4.35 billion years. It's pretty straightforward calculation. On the horizontal axis is the percentage to which the uranium-lead ratio in the zircon zone has been modified by an impact at 3.95 billion years. And so as you see, there's two different plots. As you move lead one direction, the uranium stays in the other. You're going to get a zone that has lower mu values, higher lead contents, and you're going to get one that has lower mu values and higher mu values and higher mu contents. Not right. High mu goes down, low mu goes up. But the bottom line here is that if you have a disturbance, for example, out of changing the uranium-lead ratio from a spot of about 15%, under this model, you'll change the age by about 50 million years. And so what that means is that you have a dramatic effect in age with a relatively minor shift in uranium-lead ratio. And particularly if you view this in the context of having zones that have pure lead in them.
2 minutes.
Okay. So the next part of this talk was done by Ming-Chang Liu, who does the uranium-lead 1280 zircon measurements for us at UCLA. And what he was trying to understand was, why is there a difference between a small spot and a big spot? And basically on this type of diagram, he's got the lead isotopic composition on the vertical axis, which basically corresponds to age. And he's got the number of nanoparticles on the horizontal axis. And what he notes is that if you have a small spot size, guess what? You need smaller numbers of nanoparticles to disturb the age. And as you increase these spot sizes, you need more and more of these nanoparticles. So as the spot size increases, you get more of an averaging effect. And as a result, those ages tend to more accurately, reflect the crystallization age of the rock. So the conclusion part, now I'm going to have to read this and bear with me. So the presence of lead nanoclusters within the zircon models causes shifts in the uranium-lead isotopic composition at the scale of SIM spots. The effect of these results both leads to older and younger ages. And so if you see a zircon that has a variety of ages in it, it could reflect this process. what is the next part? Oh, the broad ranges of SIMS ages that have been generated probably reflect a variety of processes. The 4.34 age is almost certainly a crystallization age because that matches crystallization ages we see of zircon-bearing rocks on the moon. The 3.8 billion year ages almost certainly reflect zircon overgrowth associated with impacts. But there's a large component here that also reflects this disturbance. And so we're having to deal with both of these issues when dealing with these ages. So they should be dealt with cautiously. Thank you.